grab a drink, and join us in the living room. She hates tech. The Dawn of the Dumb House. It's a Town and Country magazine article. So Town and Country is a nice.
Mm-hmm.
So inside a Marin County residence by designer Ken Folk on the cutting edge of home design, the anti-smart house, the latest status symbol in Silicon Valley. When the interior designer Ken Folk begins working with new clients, he asks them to fill out a folkfessional, a form with questions to help him understand what matters most to them at their home. Among his favorite question lately is, dumb house or smart house? The answer is everything. The philanthropist Christine Shantz knew exactly what she wanted for her historic 1925 home in Marin County. She tasked Folk and architect Andrew Skirman with creating a residence that could last 30 years without another renovation. All those smart flourishes that are the rage these days, automated fixtures, complex lighting systems, remote-controlled appliances, charging stations, electronic security systems, and everyone's favorite, Alexa, went out the window. Shantz didn't want a SpaceX command station, but a family retreat. Technology doesn't go with that, she says. And then the rest is blurred out, I guess, because you
have to pay or whatever.
Yeah. But that was the heading of what I sent you, and that's the house. Like,
gotcha.
This picture, beautiful. I don't like the ceiling or anything, but it's like beautiful blue. Like, I would love that front room to look
beautiful.
like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just, I was like, oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, basically designing, so that makes the assumption that like when somebody builds that house or when somebody gets a house in Silicon Valley, there's automatically an assumption of decking it out tech-wise, I guess.
Well, I think that's,
which is why
I think that's the point. You and I are not on an income level or
Right.
in a world where we get to customize our home or we aren't like building and renovating, but that's the thing. We're not a part of this conversation and we're not
Right.
looking at that daily, but apparently it is.
Yeah.
And it's a big one.
Yeah.
Because if that's a question that a designer and a renovator has to ask, that means it's a huge
Right.
area of frequent request.
Uh-huh. You know what I would love? What I think, take away all the smart stuff. I think a smart speaker is really handy, right? Listening to music and turning on music. I think that's great. The only other like really automated thing I would love, if I had to pick one thing, it would be window blinds. It would be like shades to go up and down of like to in the morning, in the evening. Like that seems to be the most practical and helpful thing, right? Not
For you, maybe like that. It sounds like that's a routine annoyance that you don't want to have to do manually every day. I would not have thought of that at all. I enjoy the process of being the one to expose the room to light. And I would love to have shutters, like shutter blinds, because I love like the ambiance and the feel that those bring. So, that's just, that must be something for you. That's like
it's in the holiday. Like remember when, what's Kate Winslet's character, right? She's sleeping in Cameron Diaz's character's bed and house.
California house.
Yeah. And she's like, time zone is shifted. And so she like presses a button and it closes the blinds and she's so happy to be able to go to sleep in dark.
Well, and I don't know what valley that house is in, but that's a great example of even though that movie was shot years ago, it was a kind of smart home and way above an average home that you or I are familiar with. So, yeah.
So there's this other thing I wanted to show you that I put in our notes we haven't really talked about, but it's this thing called brick. And the idea is to brick your phone. When you brick a technology device, it means it's broken, right? So like if your phone dies and it'll never turn on anymore, you would say it's bricked. And so that's where they got this name from. And it's this little, it's a little square that looks like a tile or an AirTag. And the idea is that you, with the app as well, you can schedule certain apps and say like, these aren't available. Social media is not available right now, right? And then you lock them. And this brick app locks those apps, kind of like a screen time thing does. But the only way that you can unlock the apps, you can't put in like a passcode. I think there is an emergency passcode or whatever, but you have to actually scan that hardware device. So let's say you like, I don't want to be on social media all day. I'm gonna brick my apps. I'm gonna leave the house, and you leave that little thing at home. Like you can't open up Facebook until you get back home and you tap your phone to it. And it's this like a whole product and a whole thing to buy and to manage to make sure you stay off the apps. And I find that very interesting.
Yeah. Are there any articles or like reviews about people that are using it and what it's doing for their...
No.
What is the main reason why you have it? To avoid the option to turn off downtime?
I mean, literally says brick your phone minus the distractions.
Okay.
Rediscover your phone's true purpose with a simple tap.
Interesting.
So, and you can like tap it and go into brick mode, and maybe, you know, with your partner, your spouse, whatever, keeps the brick with them, and they have to like give it to you, or they're the only ones who know the emergency passcode. Like it's a whole system and a whole world just to stop you from getting on your phone.
That's a sign of the times.
It is, I know. So what do you consider our house? Smart house, dumb house?
I mean, I would say we're not the smartest house in the neighborhood. We're not the dumbest, but we're probably below average.
C's?
Mid.
C's or D's?
Mid.
Mid. Okay.
Is that a phrase? Right?
Yeah, it is a phrase. Yeah,
I try.
it's a phrase. Yeah.
I try.
Yeah, we try to be rel, but we're mid sometimes.
Yeah.
All right, because we've got some smart speakers.
Yeah.
Honestly, we've got all three companies at different things, just over the years trying different ways, right? Yeah, it's me.
Yeah, that's you.
We've got some smart lights, smart garage door opener, but we don't like use it all the time. I don't have all these things set up, right?
And did you mention the door knobs? Like our door, we don't use keys to get in our house.
Right.
We use a code.
Which I think is the most convenient thing. It's pretty handy.
Yeah, except for the thumbprint one. I can never get into our own property, the garage, because my thumbprint just doesn't agree with those systems. So
You've
that's
always
frustrating.
had thumbprint issues, even on like the iPhone with the Touch ID.
Yeah.
You had,
I've done too many dishes, burnt too many,
Yeah.
whatever it is, my fingerprints are not very clearly identifiable. So,
wow. So if somebody can't
better
solve
watch out.
Yeah, I know. I'm in trouble. Okay, so
that's house stuff.
Yeah.
And then our kids have iPhones, AirPods.
Right.
That's about it, right? And then they have speakers in their room for
they use
listening.
some of them. Yeah. And then so with that, we actually use some technological tools to manage what they do and how they use their devices, right? And then we also use, like, we have some practical ways and practices that we implement to help manage technology, right? So let's start with the practical first. What are some things that we do in our home to help keep our technology under wraps, right?
Yeah.
To keep it in check.
Yeah, the main principle that drives, my thoughts on it, and that I've tried to, my ideas that I've brought to the family, was from reading a book, an excellent book by Mandy Majors, that and many other articles, and I continue to read, and to just have the latest and greatest ideas and practices to follow to protect your family relationships. But for the most part, it's whenever we're eating a meal, we try our best to say no phones, including you and I. We don't always do that perfectly, but that is not a time to have the phone nearby. And even when they're eating lunch and it's just not a family meal time, if they try to take an iPad over or a computer or a phone, I pretty regularly tell them, nope, you're eating. You need to focus on just being present and having a conversation with whoever you're sitting next to and putting the device away, hoping that they just develop that habit of just sitting and eating. No phones in the car. We have younger sons who are not yet in the stage where they have a device, and it broke my heart when our youngest said, he feels left out when everybody in his family has a device and he doesn't. And I already had limited when I drive them around the use of their phone while we're just going from point A to point B or whatever. But even more so now that their younger siblings have vocalized just kind of that feeling of, why does everybody else get to have it and I don't? I'm just sitting here. And I think it's an important time to just look outside the window, have conversations, just that habit of learning how to be somewhere in a very normal and mundane process of life, kind of traveling from home to work or home to school or home to, out to dinner, and not having to just distract yourself by being on something.
Right. And so there are some times when we're going on like road trips and stuff where we will allow movies.
We make exceptions.
Yeah. And, or girls, you can be on your phones for a little while, after it's been a few hours. But we also on road trips try to listen to audiobooks together as a family.
Right.
Or podcasts or even just music and jam out and then have some downtime for sleeping. I know that there's times when everybody's sleeping and you're going to sleep. And so we'll have some light music on, and then I'll put in, because I'm usually driving, I'll put in a headphone and listen to something so I don't interrupt everybody else.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I think we do a really good job with that on road trips. I think it's a constant battle with teenagers.
Oh, it always is.
In the car.
And for ourselves, with our own internal habits that have developed on just getting on something. But yes, they don't like it. They don't appreciate it. I hope that someday they will. But we have to constantly toe that line. And then at home, we also have implemented a sort of a charging station. So throughout the course of a day, they're free to use their phone and whatever. But we recently decided to implement a no phones upstairs policy.
Because we have a 2-story house.
Right.
And the charging station stays downstairs.
Yeah, the charging station is in the kitchen. So if you're going to be on your phone, we ask you to be downstairs. And the purpose for that was, realizing that, being isolated in your bedroom, closing the doors, it's not always a huge threat to your integrity, but it can be, and it can present a lot of temptation to do and say things and take pictures and things that you just won't do in the family public spaces. And so we try to be fair and flexible with that. If they're asking, I'm talking to a friend, or can I FaceTime? Of course, yes, you can go upstairs, but just having the phone upstairs 24/7, no. It's just not helpful for anybody. And it's too tempting to just sit on it all the time, and never disconnect. So at night before bed, the phones and devices are expected to be downstairs and on the charger, separated from the bedrooms, because that also has tied to sleep quality. Just not having the temptation to be on a blue light or a screen. Kids can lay in bed all night and watch something just like you or I could, or whatever. But we want to guard them from that since they're very young and still growing and developing and needing to, develop healthy habits and maintain healthy habits.
Right. So no phones at the dinner table or at the table at all, eating lunch,
family meal,
breakfast, right? No lunch during, or no phone during a meal.
And devices in general, right?
No devices during a meal. Limited devices in the car, because every once in a while there's always a reason or a road trip. And I have to pause on that. That's actually been something that you and I have done since before phones. We were not the family that had a DVD on, even though our van had a DVD player. When we were just going to school, there's plenty of people, and that's their choice, and that's fine, that would have a movie on.
Yeah.
We just chose never to do that. We would engage in conversation or listen to music or whatever. And then on road trips, we'd get DVDs. So no devices at the dinner table, no devices at the in the car for the most part, and limited devices upstairs, right? Those are 3 practical things we do. Anything else that stands out?
It just reminded me of, even at the grocery store, just all these years, I've never allowed, they ask all the time, can I have your phone to watch a video or to play a game while you shop? I just don't give in to that. I don't, that's just not how I approach that time. And is it harder? Yes. It's always harder to require the child to be present and to learn how to pass time. But
like at a restaurant.
Yes, restaurants, grocery store, while I'm shopping, and they want to kind of just check out. It's just something that, that's just been a value that I've tried to implement in them, and they don't like it, but just learning how to do normal life activities that you're going to have to do when you're older, and so that you're paying attention and aware of your surroundings, because more and more when you look around, everybody's looking at a device or looking down in public settings all the time, and I just want to try to keep my kids' eyes up and heads up. I'm just trying to help them realize to have an awareness of the world around you. And so I think it's just one more way to kind of guard them from developing habits so young that are just not going to end well if they continue to do them throughout the course of their adult life.
Yeah, very true. So those are practical ways that things we've implemented in our family. The digital ways, some tools that we use. First of all, we're an Apple family. I think we've said that. We all have iPhones. That's the device I've chosen for our family, iPads and Mac and all that. So we use the screen time that's built into Apple, and we'll put a schedule on the girl's phone. First of all, I have a default schedule turned on that is like, I think midnight to 6 a.m. So even if there's a wake up in the middle of the night, want to go get something, their phone's on screen time.
Yeah.
Our girls typically go to bed at a decent time. I'm not saying they're beyond the capability of wanting to get up and sneak it, but they haven't shown that pattern yet.
Right.
But we still have that on there just in case.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we turn it on randomly. You're going to a friend's house, I may turn it off a little bit. Or
if they're going to go make TikToks and have a sleepover, and you know that's where we've decided to bend, is just letting them have that flexibility when they're with a peer group, and maybe that is the engagement. I don't love it, and I always early on I tried to encourage them, like, don't be on it. But as they would say, like, all my friends are just sitting on theirs, it felt like a losing battle. And I mean, I really respect the parents who still haven't really have kept harder boundaries than us. It's just we've tried to be listening to our girls as they grapple with this in their peer group, and the things that they find to be very normalized in the group of friends that they choose, and so that they can just go with the flow of it. But it's not my favorite.
And it depends on their age. So teenagers, it's going to be way more prevalent. Whereas our 12-year-old went to a sleepover at a friend's house recently, and the mom had said, "Hey, is it okay? We're a no phone house. Is it okay if I keep his phone?"
It was no phones upstairs, I think.
Okay, was that it?
Yeah.
And then we're like, absolutely, please do. And she's like, and if he needs to call you, he can come to me. We're like, absolutely. It's
always nice to find friends and families that are like-minded in the approach, because your child then won't feel as left out. But we are maybe, I've found that in our context, we're a little bit on the stricter side.
Yeah.
But with bend, with flexibility. And yeah, we're just ultimately, the goal is to try to protect their young developing minds from seeing things, hearing things, doing things that they don't fully understand yet, developing better, good habits, developmental habits that have to take place during these formative years, that the phone can be a very easy thing to default to, rather than facing things like awkward conversations, eye contact, being in a room and knowing how to navigate, not knowing what to say or what to do, but just being in that moment and learning to get through it, and that you survive it, and not having to kind of check out or look down or fill your time with a video or an entertainment that is kind of useless. And then there was something else that came to mind. One other thing I wanted to add to that in our decision making has been that it's not black and white, and it's not all across the board. We have some of those basic standards that apply to everybody, but it's also dependent upon each child. Every child is different. Every child's habits and self-regulation is different. So we do consider which child has more of a likelihood of doing A or B activity, or what have they done. And so we don't just make everybody have the same exact boundaries and limits. If you know what I'm referring to, it's like, if we have your trust, and we know that you respect the boundaries and you understand them, and that you're willing to adhere to them, and you've shown that you're a person, that doesn't struggle with that, or doesn't struggle with the integrity of it, then then we are a little more loose. Whereas if you've done something you shouldn't do, or crossed a boundary, or just disobeyed, or tried to sneak or whatever, then we do have more of a tight rein on the kiddos that have a harder time respecting the boundaries.
Right. Absolutely. So we use screen time, like we said. We also, the music service I've chosen for our family, much to the chagrin of everybody, is Apple Music instead of Spotify. A lot of boring reasons I won't talk about now that have been going on for years, and different things anyway. But I chosen that, and one of the features it has, which again, maybe Spotify does, but is that I've turned off explicit lyrics for the account. And it's that same Apple Music that works with the Amazon Echoes or the Google Homes. So if my 8-year-old says, play this song, and that song has explicit lyrics, or he accidentally says the wrong thing or whatever, it won't play that song. That's just one small way we've tried to not have everything be wide open.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So those are some of the tools that we use to manage their downtime and what they're doing, and making sure hopefully they're listening to decent things. But another thing that we do is we use it for shared communication, right? I mean, we have a family calendar that for right now, it's the 2 teenage girls and us all share. And we have put the expectation on them very, very firmly to put your stuff on the calendar. It matters. And there's been times when, oh, I forgot.
Yeah, they're learning the habit.
Absolutely.
And there's times when it's come back, it's come back to haunt them of,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't put it on the calendar. So it creates kind of an uproar in the
Right.
routine or in the schedule of that day. But yeah, it's a great way to teach them how to communicate and keep accountable to, the family. And
because it's not just put on the calendar and everything's okay. It's also talk about it.
Right.
You need to come to us, but at least we feel like we get a little heads up.
Yeah.
And they're not texting us every moment to say, hey, what about this? What about this?
Right.
In the moment, they know to put it on the calendar. And then we also need to talk about it and see how it aligns with what we're doing as a family. Right.
As a family of 6, we have to have a tool to keep us as organized as possible. And we did used to do the whiteboard, calendar board, and we enjoy writing things down. The girls and I do, but that is one huge way in which I'm a fan of tech, is just that instant knowledge of what is the week, how can I look at it from anywhere and not have to be at home, sitting down and looking at that paper, but being able to get on there and know, oh, it's Tuesday, one of our kids is going to have cheer. I don't know. Just being able to get on there and see the forecast of the week and checking in with them and making sure that they've thought about putting their events on the calendar. There's certainly been times when they haven't, and it's caused issues with our routine and our flow, but they're learning, and it's very, very helpful.
Right.
And group texts, the family texts,
Yes.
text chains is fun. It can be silly, and it also can be very practical. So that's a great asset too.
Right. And we try to do most of our communication on there. Of course, there's some private, if you're the only one picking up this one child, we're not going to probably group text some of the, where do I turn in or whatever. But for the most part, we do a lot of it there. And that's very helpful even for their siblings to see what's happening. And there's another group text that isn't used very often yet, but that our 12-year-old is added to.
Right.
And so he'll be on there a little bit more as life continues on, and that will become the one we use. So that's really fun. Another thing we use all the time is the Find My stuff, like Find My iPhone, Find My Friends. Super practical to know where somebody is if you're expected to see them soon. And so I know that our girls use it if we're on our way to pick them up. They will see where we are. And it's just really helpful to know somebody's location without saying, hey, where are you? Hey, what's this?
Right.
So it's very helpful. That's another thing we do. I intentionally chose not to do Life 360, and I know a lot of people do it, and it's got some great features, and I'm envious of a lot of those features. But I was always concerned with something that is free that tracks your location. And Life 360 had a paid plan, but they also had a free plan that a lot of people use. And then it was revealed that they were selling that information. So the adage is, if you're not paying for it, then you're the product. Basically, I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically the idea. Facebook is a great example. How much do we pay for Facebook? Nothing. What does Facebook do? Sell our activity to target ads to us. Maybe that's innocent, maybe it's not, whatever. But the same idea with Life 360. A company is selling your location, your kid's location. Hey, how often do high school students leave their high school and go to Chick-fil-A or Whataburger? Or if we target this ad, where do they? Which is why I didn't choose to use Life 360.
Yeah.
Because it was free and I didn't trust the info. And it later came out that, yep, they were selling it.
Wow.
And again, it's all for marketing purposes, but there's always something else going on. And either way, even if it only ever amounts to ads, it still creeps me out.
Yeah. And I get that. And I appreciate that. I mean, I think that we're also trying not to be super helicoptery to where we're watching the speed that our kid is driving. And, there's just sometimes having access to all the information is too much. And I always like to try to keep in mind that while it's so advantageous to have all of these tools to make raising a family a little bit easier, there's also just a real value and benefit in remembering that not that long ago, you know, kids were growing up and navigating life outside of the parents and learning how to become young adults by not being monitored and everything that they were doing. And so yeah, I appreciate the desire to do it, and I think it's so helpful, but I also feel like, but it's also okay to just kind of send them out and let them navigate the world and not be micromanaging every moment of their life, because it becomes a full-time job. And that's what we found with, you know, just the circling back to the phone limits and boundaries. It can be a lot, and it can consume so much of your time. And at some level, you have to just be able to step back and say, you know, we've got to trust them. We got to raise them to the heart, hope that they see the wisdom in what we're doing when we set boundaries, and that they feel them inside too, and kind of own them as they get into young adulthood.
Ultimately, it's about character and integrity. No matter what device you have, no matter what app you're using, no matter where you're driving to or what friend you're with, you need to have character and integrity. And that is really the answer of how we manage our kids' tech, is we parent to the heart. We use tools, we use practical things because we all can easily get addicted and want to just delve into this world of online. But hopefully there's a conviction at some point if you're doing something wrong because of your faith, because of how you were raised, because of what you know from right and wrong.
And they have made wrong choices. They have misstepped and stepped outside of the boundaries we've set, and it's not been a perfect ride at all. But it always felt like the more I was trying to control, the more I could tell it wasn't going to be effective anyway. Like, I cannot control everything as a mom that they're going to do and look at and see and say. And that was creating a lot of worry and anxiety. So I had to just dial back to what is the goal? The goal is to constantly try to appeal to their heart. Like you said, knowing that they, you know, just like you and I, they're not going to do it perfectly. They're not going to make every right choice. We're going to have disappointments and things we have to navigate that are not easy, but that's how hopefully that they'll learn. And that's how hopefully we don't have to feel like we can just have like a tight-fisted clamp on every single aspect of their lives as they grow into young adulthood. We've been tackling tech and boundaries with our family for about 9 or 10 years now. It's exhausting, but it is worth it.
It's important.
Yeah, it's important, and I think I've had enough of this conversation.
Let's continue it later.
Sounds good.